Hello and welcome to the two-man power trip of wrestling. I'm your host, JP John Poz. With me today, special guest, former GHC Junior Heavyweight Champion. He's been in WWF, he's been in WCW, he's been in Ring of Honor, he's been basically everywhere. Pro wrestling, Noah, you name it. He is Mr. Mike Modest. Mike, welcome to the two-man power trip. How you doing?
Right on, man. Thank you for having me on, man.
What is going on in your world? What have you been up to?
You know, not a whole lot. I'm just being a dad, really. I've got a 5-year-old daughter, and not with her mother, but I have my daughter every weekend. So that kind of ended wrestling for me, really. Uh, I've had a few offers lately to wrestle, and I'm just really not that interested anymore. It means taking a weekend from my daughter, so. I've been doing some acting. In fact, I've got an audition tomorrow for Ross department stores. Um, so I've been doing that, and I really enjoy doing that. Acting's a lot of fun. The department store thing might not be the funnest gig I've ever done, though,
Hmm.
but uh, yeah. So that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm just being a dad.
But as far as wrestling, are you officially retired or unofficially retired?
Unofficially retired. I'm not even retired at all. I mean, I could totally go out and do it. Um, I got a call from a friend of a student of mine and also a friend of mine, Vinny Massaro, uh, and and another guy named Big Ugly. They were wondering if I wanted to, have a 6-man with them and against some youngsters. One of them being Titus Alexander, Big Ugly's son, and he's gotten some pretty good, you know, momentum lately in the wrestling world, and he's a real talented kid. And it's just like, but man, I when it comes down to it, when someone hits me up and they're like, hey, uh, why don't you come do this? The uh, the thought of telling my daughter, I did that with my sons. I had 2 sons when I was in Noah, and
Yep.
I missed a lot, with them. And this is probably my last child, and so I just want to do it right this time, and I don't want to miss any weekends because of, some quick little payday, and I'm past that now. It's just like I don't know. I'm not looking for a big break. I'm not looking to make waves in the wrestling industry anymore. I'm not, it's just not my priority anymore.
So not retired officially, yeah, like you said, unofficially, but you're still go. You could still go. Basically, is what I mean.
Yeah,
You could if you wanted to.
yeah. In fact, I've done some seminars, just working with young kids, younger guys and stuff, and sharing my knowledge and my experience, what I experienced in the industry. Uh, I've done that, a few times, and I love getting back in the ring a little bit. Uh, it I don't know. It's just one of those things. It's really, really hard to not be a part of it. Um, when Vinny called me the other day, I was really torn, you know, but ultimately my daughter wins out every time.
Gotcha. I gotcha. When a lot of people think of you and they think of your career, do they think of Beyond the Mat first, or do they think of no? Like, what do they think of? Because I always think of like, okay, Beyond the Mat, like that. That's like a huge kind of like coming out party for you in the wrestling business.
Yeah, it was. An interesting thing about that movie is, it was pretty close to reality, but that was not my first WWE tryout. That was like, gosh, that was my last. Um, which is interesting. It was portrayed as my first, but it was actually my last. And
That is interesting. Yeah.
yeah, I had a whole bunch of tryouts with them, and I think overall feeling was that I was just not big enough. I wasn't what they were looking for. I mean, for goodness sakes, I was smaller than Coco Beware. I remember when I got into the wrestling industry, I thought, you know what? At least I'm taller than Coco Beware, you know.
Yep. Yeah.
And it turned out I was just a touch shorter than him.
Wow.
So I just wasn't what they were looking for, especially at the time. Uh, you know, shortly after they were looking for smaller guys. Uh, I was just the wrong size at the wrong time, you know. And I actually, when Barry Blaustein hit me up to do the film and to do the tryout, I was already convinced that WWE didn't want anything to do with me. And so at first I was like, no, I'm really not interested, you know. And it's so funny. It's just like, I don't know, it's just like with ladies, you know, if you're really not interested in them, you have a whole bunch of them trying to, you know, talk to you.
Yes.
Um, and the wrestling industry's like that too. When you really don't want anything to do with it, or you're just like, yeah, no, uh, you know, this is someone else's opportunity. I'm not really interested. But they really wanted me in this spot. So, pardon me. So I basically said, well, the only way I'll do it is if I'm guaranteed 10 minutes, because the typical way a tryout would go is you're told you have 10 minutes, then, you know, a few minutes before you go out there, they're telling you you got 5. Then in the gorilla room, they're telling you you got 3. And then when you get out in the ring, they're telling you go home in a minute and a half, you know.
Yep.
So it makes it really hard sometimes to build a story, which that's that's what I do. I was never the fancy, flashy kind of wrestler. I'm much more a storyteller, and so it takes a moment to educate the people on what's happening in the story, you know. So I wanted that 10 minutes, and I was told by everyone, Barry Blaustein, Jim Cornette, uh, and higher ups. I was told that I had that 10 minutes. So Tony and I get out there, and then I don't even know when it was, but it was very quick into the match. I would say within a minute to a minute and a half, the referee was calling go home. And I just looked at him and I was like, nope, not doing that. And the reason why was is it was my last tryout anyways. You know, I'd been to this dance before, and this time I was gonna finish the song, you know. I
Yep.
wasn't I wasn't gonna be cut off at the intro, at the, you know, at the, or at the drum solo or anything. I wanted to actually have that shot, you know. And my other concern was I knew that Draws was in the film as like this young guy trying to break down the doors, you know, and trying to move from one sport to another. And that was a compelling story. And I saw right away that I was in danger of being the wah 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 story, you know, the sad sack. Oh, they were told to, you know, finish the match early because the crowd didn't like them, you know.
Mm.
And I didn't want that to be my mark in that film. I didn't want them to tell that story about me. And so when they told me to go home, I just said no. And Tony and I finished our match. By the end of the match, the actually within the minute and a half that they were saying go home, the crowd was actually getting into it. They were getting what was going on, and they popped really big for the finish. And we were just the opening match. Neither of us had any TV time, no nothing, and we won over a WWE crowd, which is really tough to do in the first place.
Yep.
And so they really couldn't paint this picture of us not being ready or us not being good. So, I don't know. I know I kind of take stories and just kind of start going off with it, but yeah, that's and as far as what you were saying, like what do people know me as? I think it's how smart they are to the industry. Um, I've had people that are just housewives and not interested in wrestling at all, but they happen to watch Beyond the Mat because, I'm their bartender or they've met me somewhere along the line. I'm a family friend or whatever. Uh, and they're really impressed with the movie. And I've had people, recognize me certain places because of the film still. Uh, but I think if you really follow wrestling at all, then I think you would probably know me more for Noah for Japan.
How long was that match with Tony, by the way? Um,
It was right around 10 minutes.
oh, so it did almost go the full 10. Okay.
Yeah.
Were they pissed when you walked in the back? Did they say anything about
Oh
about it?
man. So the only one that was pissed, it's funny you mentioned that. So I could hear Bruce Pritchard on the referee's earpiece. He was yelling so loud that I could hear him. And he was saying, go home, go home. Does he know what fucking go home means? And
Wow.
he
Wow.
was pissed when I walked through the door, walked through the curtain. He was very upset. He asked me if I knew what go home meant. And I said, "Yeah, Bruce." I said I was told I had 10 and I'm taking my 10. That's what I was told. And it was a guarantee. I wasn't part of the WWE tryout system at that moment. I was a part of a film being filmed, and the WWE had an agreement with that film company and
Right.
with the producers of that film. So, like, I want to make it clear I wouldn't have done that had I been there as a participant of a WWE event.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Yep. Yep.
This was
Perfect
my
sense.
this was my perfect uh, excuse to not listen to what they said and to do my own thing, and I wasn't going in business for myself either because I was told by the producers of Beyond the Mat and Jim Cornette and everyone that had represented themselves to me. I was told by everyone that I had that 10 minutes. So I knew that Bruce was pissed about it, but what are you going to do?
Is that why you don't get signed and Tony does get signed and he goes to the Funkin' Dojo? Is that have to do with it?
No, well, I don't think so. Um, I don't think that had to do with it. Um, it could have been the NBC Wrestling Secrets Exposed. It could have been, uh, Tony's a really big guy.
Yeah, he's a lot bigger than you. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and also, a very, very accomplished amateur wrestler as well.
Yep.
Very talented guy. So, no, but I had a lot of opportunities with WWE. Um, and so this was just another, to me. And I knew it was probably going to be my last.
When that happens and you don't get signed there, how quickly do you kind of get in touch with WCW, or how quickly does WCW get in touch with you?
Almost immediately. Yeah,
And
they
who is it? Like who gets in touch with you from WCW?
oh gosh. Oh man. It's blowing my mind that I can't remember his name.
Kevin
Oh,
Sullivan.
no. So no, it wasn't Kevin Sullivan. It was this older gay gentleman, and I'm just drawing a blank on his name right now, and it's pissing me off.
Jim Barnett.
Yes, Jim Barnett. Thank you. Jim Barnett contacted Roland and APW and myself, and he was the one that he saw a similarity in me and Kevin Sullivan, and he watched me wrestle, and basically told Kevin Sullivan, "Hey, this guy is the real deal. He's an actual wrestler." And because I mean I know how to do some amateur wrestling too. I'm not near as good as Tony Jones is, honestly. Um,
Right.
and not as big. Tony's always, he's always got that weight advantage on me. You know, um, he's always been a heavier, especially in the midsection. Than myself.
Yeah.
So he's got more weight to push around. He's gonna love that I said that.
So
um,
does WCW want to use you for the cruiserweight division? Like, what do they say, or what do they want? Like, what do they want to do with you? They like you; you're a good hand, but what do they want to do with you?
yeah, right away. Kevin Sullivan and Bob Mould and Ed Ferrara were all very high on me, and they were going to put the belt, the cruiserweight belt that Prince Ikea was wearing at the time, and or the artist, and so they were going to put that belt on me. And then what happened was, when I showed up at South Padre Island, they Mike Graham and Terry Taylor informed me that Kevin Sullivan had been fired, and that basically uh, Bischoff's crew was coming back, and Bischoff and Russo were coming back, and they had put a freeze on all title changes. So briefly, I was going to do the job for the artist, and then within a half an hour, someone came to me. Both Terry Taylor and Mike Graham came to me and said, "Actually, so it's been changed. You're going to go over on him still, but it's going to be a non-title match." So that's what the way it was explained to me going into it. But on live TV, they really didn't do a very good job explaining it, and there was a little bit of confusion at first, as to, did I win the belt or not? Uh, but you would think the fact that they didn't hand it to me would be enough for people to understand.
Right, right.
Um, but after that, I was released pretty quickly by Bischoff and Russo. Then they hired me back about 6 months later for a like a tryout with Chris Daniels, that was also going to be a part of an angle with Scott Steiner, where he was going to come in and beat us up with a some kind of workout tool or whatever, and come out and destroy our match, as it was going. And that's the one where Chris ended up slipping on the belt, on the ropes, and fell on his neck. Uh, Pretty bad, looking bump, but thank God he was able to, still walk after that, and still has a great career. Uh, Thank God. So, but yeah, so they brought us back, and then when they hired us, when Bischoff hired us, the idea was that he and Russo had come up with, was that Chris Candido and I were going to be a tag team, and that we were going to be Scott Steiner's mini-me's, like his little minions that because we were both kind of short, buff little dudes with blonde hair, and then you got Big Papa Pump, um, sending us to do his dirty work, and then if someone needs to do a job, I could be the job guy, or maybe Chris, but probably I would have been the job guy
Yeah.
between the three of us, obviously. But that's okay, man. I don't mind being the Arn Anderson of a crew, you know. Um, someone it was crazy, like years and years ago, someone mentioned to me that, Arn Anderson was the jobber of the Horsemen. And I was like, no, get out of here. He's amazing. There's no
Yeah.
way. And I go back and I look and I'm like, God darn it, that if they weren't right. But it doesn't matter if you do your job well enough. um, People really don't care that much. You can still be a star. And so yeah, that's what happened with that, man. It was a lot of fun after my match with the Prince. I went up and I sat and I watched Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair wrestle from my balcony. And I sat there and drank a bunch of beer, and because I'd been dieting and really, not eating anything fun for quite a while. And after that match, I felt like, you know what, man, you deserve a couple of beers, and then, to be able to watch Hogan and Flair wrestle below was just amazing, just a real gift.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. When you look at it, though, with WCW with 2001, when around late 2000, 2001, when they bring you and Daniels back, were you officially signed to a contract though? Like were you back in the fold officially?
Yeah, both times. So it was really interesting. The first time I was there, I had a contract and it was signed by me, and I sent it into legal, and it was went to JJ Dillon's office, and JJ Dillon, the manager extraordinaire that he is, he was already in the loop on this change that was happening, so he held my contract. And so it was never signed by legal. And what was screwed is I had already given notice to my job. I had a pretty good job at a furniture company, Court Furniture, and so I had already quit. And now, once this thing happened, I had to go begging for my job back, and it was just a nightmare. And so I didn't really have anything to stand on. The second time around, I actually had the contract signed. And when WWE purchased, I was a part of that process of elimination where, every couple of weeks or so, a few more, guys would get the axe. And Johnny Ace was in touch with me for a long period of time. And he assured me that they were going to probably keep me, and but they didn't. I was one of the very last cuts, but I was really grateful still the way it went down, because I was on contract getting paid for another year after the WWE purchased. So it was nice. I was working independence and still getting paid that money. Um, they allowed us to do that. So it was pretty cool of them to do that.
Yeah, it's almost a good thing you got signed when you did because you could kind of get double paid almost. Like you said, work the Indies and get paid for the rest of the WCW contract because Vince bought him out and they still technically still technically owed you that money.
Right, right.
So
Yeah, so it was,
did you want to go to WWF though at that point, or were you like, this is kind of good, I'm getting paid and I can work the Indies and get paid?
you know, um I always wanted that WWE contract. I mean, anybody does. If you're in the wrestling industry, you know that getting that WWE contract is the possibility of having a name that will make you money forever. Like the Honky Tonk Man, greatest intercontinental champion ever in the
Yep.
history of the WWF or WWE. The Honky Tonk Man and these guys. even a guy like Tito Santana, Greg Valentine, these guys are superstars forever. They could be in walkers and still be doing, trade shows and stuff and selling autographs
Yep.
and pictures and books or whatever. So I always did want that, but there's just a time where I just realized it wasn't going to happen. And it was right around the time that Beyond the Mat came. And I really did want to go to Japan. That was always a real goal of mine. Uh, I always admired the sport aspect of most of the companies in Japan. I mean, I don't want to blanket statement it because they do. I mean, they are the inventors of, uh, wrestling the Invisible Man, um,
Right.
and other silly things, that they've done. Uh, different wrestling companies over there, um, and I mean, it's entertainment, whatever. But I loved like All Japan was what I really watched, and New Japan. And both of those companies took wrestling very seriously. And, so I was beyond honored when Misawa ended up coming to California, and they ended up picking up a few of us and taking us to Noah and letting us wrestle there.
That is amazing because they all leave, they have that mass exodus from All Japan and they go to Noah, and Noah becomes the biggest organization in Japan for several years. I mean, Misawa, Kobashi, Akiyama, I mean, those are the guys, and they were selling out the Tokyo Dome. They were doing the huge shows. So that mass exodus not killed All Japan because they're still around today, but I mean, it made them less than, and it made Noah the number one organization in Japan by far.
Yeah. Um, well, I mean, New Japan has pretty much always been number one. They they're the big money company. Uh, but Noah was to me, I guess, the NWA of Japan at that time. And I liked the concept of what they did. Um, the idea of taking different styles and, having lucha, having smaller guys, having big guys, all kinds of different styles, and bringing it into there. One of the things that I thought was really interesting was, and I learned this very quickly, when guys go to Japan, they think what they want is, you know, a person that wrestles their style. And that really isn't what they want. They've got a whole bunch of people there that wrestle their style. The reason they're bringing you in is for flavor. They're bringing you in for international flavor. They want you to do your thing. They want you to do your style. Uh, and I got very popular with the Modesto smile, just doing a big thumbs up with a real cheesy smile.
Yeah.
And I would do it. I would fake an elbow and then step on the guy's stomach and walk on him and then kind of smile to the crowd and do the big thumbs up. And the crowd would go crazy for it because it wasn't something they were getting from the regular Noah talent. The Noah talent wasn't really doing that. And what else was really cool was how me doing that and that getting a reaction and getting popular, some of the Japanese wrestlers started queuing in on that. And then, for example, I would do it at the beginning of the match. Maybe I would start a match with sternness, and maybe it was me and Hashi, and I would slam him and go for the fake elbow, step on his tummy, and do a big smile, right? And now
Yeah.
here comes Akiyama and Saito, and they shit can everybody. and they slam me, and they all hit an elbow on me, and Akiyama fakes it, steps on me, and then they all thumbs up me. You know, as I'm getting up, I see them, they're all doing the thumbs up back to me. And that would get major reaction because, again, they're stepping out of their norm, you know, and the fans really loved seeing the very serious Japanese wrestlers kind of let loose a little bit and do a little entertaining, you know.
Yep. Could definitely see that. When you do get brought in, is Harley Race like the booker for the Gaijins? Like who's like the person, or like you said, was it literally just Misawa? It's like I like this guy and we're booking him.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it was. It was Misawa and Ryu Nagata, and Ryu liked us, liked me, Donovan, Bison, and a few other guys. That they ended up bringing over. They brought over some guys when Donovan and I formed Pro Wrestling Iron. They brought over a few guys from there, and but there wasn't really a gaijin booker or anything. But Harley Race was also bringing in talent, and so like they were heavy with foreign talent at that time. You know, it would be like three of Harley's guys, and then three of three of my guys, basically.
When they put you and Donovan Morgan together, I know obviously you guys have a big history together, a big past together. Was that the idea to make you guys a tag team there?
Yeah, yeah, we were a tag team, and um, Donovan was typically the guy that went down, and I didn't even realize it at first. Like, it's so weird. I didn't even understand why they were doing that. And then when I got my title match against Kanemaru, they mentioned that I was undefeated.
Wow.
And I was like, huh? How am I undefeated? We've lost a shitload of matches. And then I thought about it, and I was like, oh, but my shoulders didn't land.
Donovan lost, yeah.
Donovan lost. So technically, I'm undefeated. And so I had this match against Kanemaru, and they when I found out that I was winning the title, I couldn't believe it, honestly. It was the last thing in the world I saw coming. And of course, a major honor, but it was also a kind of a mixed blessing in a way. They for some reason stopped representing the belt on television, and they stopped promoting me on television. And I never really quite understood why they did that. Um, the opening of the show just wouldn't have the GHC Junior belt on it. They would have the Junior Tag belts, the GHC Junior Tag belts, but not the Junior Singles. And so it kind of really, honestly, it pissed me off. And I didn't understand why they would do that. Why put a belt on somebody and then hide the belt and then hide that individual on television, you know? And it didn't make sense to me, but for some reason it made sense to them, and that's what they did. And I ended up asking for the belt to be taken away from me because I just wanted to go back to being a talent that was represented in magazines and represented on television. Um, it was weird. At the time, there was even times where people wouldn't. They'd go, "Oh, you still wrestle for Noah?" Because I had not been on television in such a long time. We would go to towns and people would go, "Oh, you're here with Noah? I didn't even know you were still wrestling for them." So I actually asked for the belt to be taken off of me, and that's when I was told that I would lose it to Segura. And great guy to drop it to. I'll tell you that. He's an amazing talent and great human being. So
It's almost like it's such an awesome moment, but they ruined it. You know what I mean? They ruined an awesome resume thing. Because I'm mentioning at the top of the show, wow, GHC Junior Heavyweight Champion, man, it's a huge thing, but they almost like ruined it by not really booking you and not really utilizing you to the full potential of the title, and really, for God knows what reason, not promoting the champion.
right. I mean, that's the part of it that really just didn't make any sense to me. Like why would you not represent that title on television still? And if you and I did think about the possibility that maybe they were trying to establish like, okay, the belt is no longer like in Japan. Now the belt is in the United States, and so, but I don't know. All I know is that they also didn't put my matches on television anymore. Like they were booking me, I'd be over there, but my matches weren't televised. And, anything I was doing wasn't really televised. And so it wasn't helping me sell merchandise. It wasn't helping my career in Japan to have the belt at that time. So I
Yeah,
really wanted to.
kind of confusing too. It's like, yes, you're the champ. Here, you're giving you a push. And it's like, yeah, but we're not going to, you know, really push you. You know what I mean?
That was
What
the
a
weird. Yes, it was
conundrum.
like you're exactly. It was like, hey, here's a push, but we're gonna push you real light.
Yeah, weird. Very, very weird. So, did you ever get an explanation on that? They never explained it to you.
No, no, they never explained it to me, and so much of it was like that. As a gaijin at the time, you were. I mean, I don't know what it's like there now, but at the time, you were very in the dark as to what direction the company was going or what was happening. Um, I guess they made it very clear that it wasn't your company, it was their company. And even though I was a major part of it for 5 years, it was not mine and never was going to be like my home, you know.
So, with Pro Wrestling Noah, you were there for what? It had to be 5 years, right? Basically, you were
Yeah,
there, part of the company.
yeah, yeah, 5 years.
Uh, that's pretty good. I mean, as far as like being able to be booked in Japan in one organization for 5 years, right? I mean, that's a good run.
Oh, I thought it was a really great run and still eternally grateful. And my favorite company that I ever worked for was Noah. Better than any company I ever worked for. I loved working for that company, and I loved the product. I loved the style, the hard hitting style. Not that we always hit each other really super hard. There were country towns where we would take it a little easier on each other, but for the most part, it's pretty hard hitting wrestling.
You like
Um,
that style?
yeah, Misawa, one time he hit me so hard, he slapped me so hard in my head, on the top of my head, that I still feel it sometimes. Like I think he broke like a like a nerve or something
Yeah.
because it still hurts. There's this spot up here that is just tender to the touch, man. And um man, he slapped me so hard and his forearm legendary stiffness. Um, like it was no joke. I don't know what he weighed. I don't know, but I'll tell you this: he threw a forearm like he was a 400 pounder. His elbow was no joke. You still there?
Yep. Still here.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, that Hellbow, if you will, from Misawa was vicious.
Oh yeah. You know, I had so to kind of give you an example of what I mean by storyline and by telling a story when you're in the ring. One of the things that I always do is I try to look at things in wrestling matches that I just hate, things that I find repetitious or pointless. And one of the things that I find pointless and repetitious and actually insulting is the uh, rollover from the headlock to the pin, 1, 2, back to the headlock, back to the pin, 1, 2, back to the headlock. Oh, let me grab his tights this time, 1, 2. You know, no one wins doing that. So why does every wrestler do it? Why try to roll the guy over and pin him like that? Because no, you're not going to win the match, and every fan knows it. It's just a time killer, is all it really is. It's something to keep busy and active while you're calling a high spot. That's the hand movement that the magician does, basically. You know, I'm calling one tackle, takedown, but I'm doing the rollover thing so that the referee has something to do. 1, 2, and the crowd thinks something's going on, but they're not hearing what I'm doing. You know, and so I was wrestling Ricky Momota over there, and his finisher back in the day was a belly to back suplex. And so I came up with this idea since I was wrestling him, and he was an older guy, and it was like the opening match, and it wasn't on television. I came up with this idea to finish the match with that rollover thing, you know, from the headlock. And so we worked it the entire match. The entire match, you know, he's got me in the headlock, and you know, I shoot him off one tackle. He chops me, gets me back in the headlock, takes me down. I roll him over 1. He comes back. You know, I roll him back over 1, 2. Comes back to his ass, get back up, shoot off, go. We do another little high spot. You know, but each time it's going back to that headlock and back to me rolling him over and getting that one pin. You know, that 1 count or a 1, 2 count. And then at the end of the match, he goes for his finisher, and he's got the crowd going, and they see that he's getting ready to hit me with his finisher. I'm sorry, wait a minute. Yeah, he goes for his finisher. As he picks me up, I kick. I came back down. I did a switch. Now I go for his finisher on him, right? I pick him up. He kicks back down. Now he takes me over in an amateur head and arm takeover. He pulls me over, boom. I roll him over into the pin, but this time I bridge. And when I bridged, I stacked him so deep that I got a 1, 2, 3. And the crowd went effing crazy, as if I'd hit him with some amazing move, you know. But they saw the story. They saw what was happening the entire time. I kept trying to pin him with this little move, this little cheapskate maneuver, you know, and it wasn't working for me. But at the very end, I changed it just enough that I was able to get that 3 count, you know. And Mitsuhara Misawa actually saw me in the hallway after that match, and he smiled at me, and he goes, "Oh, Modesto-san, good finish." And dude, that made my heart like just explode with joy. You know, Misawa, I can tell you that the times he complimented me are on one hand. You know, they're very few. He didn't throw them out easily or readily. If he had something nice to say to you, you really earned it.
And
So
that was a great finish too. That was good psychology. And Misawa's the GOAT giving you that compliment. He's one of the GOATs anyway.
yeah, 100%, man.
Love that he's you know, making sure that you know that he knows it was a great finish. That's great. Great story.
Well, and I was actually just happy that he watched the match.
Hmm.
You know that uh, that he had an interest in a match, me and Ricky Momoda. That he watched it, and then he appreciated what we did, and appreciated the finish, and it's interesting because the rest of the night, every time someone would do that, the crowd bought into it just a little more, and
Yep.
that's one of the things that I miss so much about wrestling. I really do. I try so hard to watch current product, and it gets really difficult sometimes. Um, what did I see? I on NXT I just watched Chase U wrestle Pretty Deadly. And man, it's just a different kind of thing. Um,
Different era.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And wrestling has morphed and done its different things, several times. Uh, like, don't get me wrong, RoboCop coming after the Four Horsemen back in the day was arguably one of the worst things I've ever seen.
Yes.
Um, the midget that bombed Hogan's boat with the shark fin. I don't know if you ever saw that.
Yes.
Hogan's
Yep.
sitting on his boat, and here comes a midget swimming around with a shark fin and bombs, and he hooks him to Hogan's boat. Uh, I've seen some really bad stuff, so I'm not saying that like this generation is worse or anything. It's the TV product that I don't like. It's the way it's set up. It's the way um again, why do the small little finishers and finishes when I already know that's not the finish. There's no surprise about finishes, and there's a whole lot of the Japanese false finish, false finish, false finish. Uh, it's I don't know. It's just a different product to me, and I find myself going and watching like old Portland wrestling, and you know, pulling up old NWA, uh, old Memphis stuff, and then I get my wrestling fix that way, usually. I
The
do
good
like
stuff.
yeah, I do like some of the stuff that they're doing, and um I'm a huge fan of Karrion Kross, Killer Cross. Um, he's a great talent, and so I see. AEW. I enjoy their product very much. I think it's really neat that there are so many companies right now. There's MLW, there's ROH, there's uh, of course WWF, NXT. There's all these different companies and divisions of companies where guys can go and make a living, and I think that's pretty cool to see that. And also, I've seen this explosion in indie wrestling where independent shows will draw 1,000 to 2,000 people. APW, the company that I started with Roland years ago, it's now running shows at the Cow Palace, and the current guy that runs it is doing a great job, and they they sell out places that they do events in. It's pretty neat to see that explosion of people that love pro wrestling and appreciate it.
Yeah, it's interesting that there's like it's kind of popular in an odd way, but then the ratings don't show that it's as popular as it used to be. But indies are kind of doing well. There's a bunch of different promotions out there. Like there's Impact is on TV, WoW is on TV, MLW's on TV, obviously AEW and WB and NXT. I mean, they're all on TV. It's just so interesting to me. It's like it is one aspect popular, but in another aspect, it's nowhere near as popular as it used to be.
Well, and I think that's because you're sharing the market. You know, it's like okay, so you have a burger restaurant in town, all right, let's say, and let's say you've got 5,000 people in your town, and everybody comes to your place for burgers, right? And now there's another burger place opens up, and yet another one and another one. Now you got four burger places in town, and they're serving 5,000 people. Well, now if you just went in any of those burger places, you might think that burgers aren't all that popular. Maybe people are eating a lot of pizza. Well, burgers are still just as popular as they always were. But now this group of people likes burger A, another group of people like burger B, so it's like I think I think you're spreading uh your money, obviously. If I'm a wrestling fan and I know WWE is coming to town on a given month, and there's a little indie show coming up. Well, I might not go to that indie show and save my money for WWE, right?
Hmm.
But if WWE isn't coming for 4 months, and there's this indie company that I've been hearing about. Now I go to their show, right? And I go, wow, this is awesome. I really like this. And I get to talk to these wrestlers. Like they're not superstars that are untouchable to me. And I can buy this dude's shirt and he'll sign it for me. And I might see this guy in WWE one day, but right now he's my friend and I can actually touch this person, right?
Hmm. Yep.
And now you get kind of caught up in the indie storyline and what's going on with that company, and yet you don't have that much money, every month. You don't have more money to spend on wrestling, so maybe you missed the WWE show this year or this time around because it's coming to another city that's close to you, and maybe you'll catch that one instead because you've been spending money at this indie show, or whatever. And so I think and obviously Nielsen ratings are really hard to judge now. Most people don't even have cable,
A lot of
so it's,
streaming, a lot of streaming
yeah,
going on.
right. So it's really hard to say, okay, well, here's these numbers, and well, okay, what do those numbers really mean? The Fed has its own station, for God's sakes.
Yeah,
How could wrestling not be more popular now than ever? It's
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 crazy.
sat
WWE's worth billions. Yeah,
Yeah, it's saturated.
true. Yeah, very saturated. But WWE is just killing it right now. I mean, they're worth billions. If they were to sell, they're probably going to sell for about 8 billion. So it is crazy to think that maybe it's a bit top heavy, the business.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
So as we hit the wind down, we head towards the finish here. Just going back to your career, and as far as like what you think about what happened, as far as the states, it seemed like you were going to be big with Ring of Honor, but then you kind of, I guess, maybe took more Noah bookings. I know you were on TNA at one point. I mean, did you think that maybe you could have been a bigger star here in the states if you didn't get booked so much in Japan, or what did you think about just like Ring of Honor and other situations of TNA and other places you only worked a little bit?
Well, unfortunately, Ring of Honor was a problem with a guy there named Gabe, and I don't remember what his last name was.
Sapolsky.
Yes, yeah. That was my problem with Ring of Honor, and it was actually just a misunderstanding, and but then words were said. What happened was I went and wrestled for them. They liked me, and Gabe said to me at the venue, he said, "Hey, we want to book you again for this next thing coming up, And I said, okay, that's great. Gabe, can you please email that to me? Because that's how I do all my bookings. I don't I don't do them in the locker room. I don't have a laptop with me. I don't have any way of like making this like in my concrete memory, you know. Can you please email this to me, your proposal? Because that's how I do it. And he said, yeah. And he didn't. And I forgot about the conversation and didn't even think I was booked. I went and wrestled in Japan. I came back and Gabe called me and was like, dude, what's up? Why haven't you, you know, um, you know, I don't remember even what it was. He was wanting to talk to me. I don't even remember what it was. Like why he was pissed at me, but he called me and he was yelling basically, and I was like, what's wrong? What are you upset about? And he's like, well, I told you you were booked, blah blah blah. And I said, no, you were supposed to email me if I was booked. That's the way it's done. And so that's basically what happened is I missed a booking that I wasn't aware that I had. So, and I didn't have a plane ticket for, like, so I don't know. That's what happened with Ring of Honor. It was that
So just guys.
it was, yeah, they were just starting, and it was just basically a behind the scenes kind of mess up kind of thing, and that was that. But yeah, I think some
Because I
of,
know you briefly MLW and TNA and AAA as well.
yeah, 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 I definitely made my rounds, man. I
When you look at it, do you wish though that it worked out differently with ROH, or were you glad that it didn't work out?
oh, it is what it is. I don't really look back on it and think one way or the other. Um, you'll make yourself crazy doing that, and you just never know. Sometimes, what's that Garth Brooks song? You got to thank God for unanswered prayers. Like I would have loved to work for Ring of Honor more. I thought it was a really cool concept, and I thought it was a cool company, and but when that happened, I was just like, well, I'm not going to worry about it. Like I can't control. I mean, that's how everybody was doing business is email, not just talking to someone and saying, "Hey, you want to work the next show?" And Gabe's Gabe's stand on it was that he felt they were a big enough company that I should have remembered, like for example, if Vince McMahon called me and Vince said, "Hey, Mike, I want to book you on a show coming up in 2 months." Guess what? I'm probably going to remember that show. you
Yeah.
know, I'm going to remember that booking. Okay. But at the time, I was working a lot of indies, and every indie has a cool name, CWW or CQW or
Yep.
TWTWT or whatever it is. Everyone's got a cool name, and it's got, they've got a cool three-letter moniker thing. And so to me, at the time, Ring of Honor was just another one of those things. It wasn't like a major new, thing. It was a new company. It was coming up. So not to knock them, I just didn't remember the booking, unless you email me. So that's all it was.
And you mentioned that Pro Wrestling No obviously was your favorite place to work, but when people remember you and they look back, what do you think is like the legacy or the stamp of Mike Modest? Because great wrestler, you wrestled everywhere. Obviously, 5 years with Noah is pretty damn impressive. During a streak of Noah where they had some of the best guys in the world in that roster. I mean, geez. So what do you think is like your legacy looking back?
I don't know, man. I don't think I leave much of a legacy. I one of the things I really I think is neat is when I see guys that I trained or that I had part of the training process, even guys that I trained and then they trained somebody. I look at the younger generations coming up and it makes me really proud. Um, you know, there's guys like the Suburban Commandos um, that they were trained by Joe Applebaumer, who I trained, who he wrestled as Pogo the Clown down in XPW.
Oh yeah, I know
Uh,
Pogo. Yep.
yeah, Vic Grimes I trained, and Vic Grimes is famous for his crazy death-defying fall with New Jack,
Yep.
and so I look at a lot of those kinds of things, and also lives that I changed. Um, I had a kid come in one time, try out for wrestling, and I told him, I said, after the tryout, I told him, I said, well, you didn't pass, and I said, you know, um, it kind of made him cry a little bit, and I said, but hey, man, I said, let's not worry about whether or not you can be a pro wrestler or not. Let's worry about whether or not you're going to be alive when you're 21 years old.
Hmm.
Let's talk about that, because he was so obese, this guy.
Yep.
And so I made a very basic diet plan for him and started him on a very easy, low impact exercise routine. And I told him, to do this for 2 months. And after 2 months, go get yourself a gym membership and then, talk to a trainer there. And so 2 years later, this guy comes and he's watching me, train people in the class. And I get out of the ring and I ask him if, he wants information about becoming a wrestler. And he says, no, I actually don't anymore. He goes, I was here a few years ago and I was really obese. And then I recognized him and I was like, wow, he had lost like over 200 pounds.
Wow. Damn.
Yeah, it was amazing. He was only like 230 pounds now, and he was 400 and something, And so he and I talked, and one of the things he said to me is he said that about a year after he had been following my, my basic diet program, and he had gotten a gym membership, and he said after about a year he had lost enough weight that he had gotten his first girlfriend ever in his whole life,
Nice.
and so
Nice.
I think that's my legacy, man, is or at least I hope it is. I hope that I've changed a few people's lives. I've done something kind for somebody along the way. Um, Donovan asked me one time, he said, why do you think God would make us professional wrestlers? Like, what's the point? And I think the point is that we show people how tough the human body is and how tough the human spirit is. And even though we do know how to fall, and even though the ring does give slightly, um, our bodies take tremendous punishment when we do what we do. And it's amazing how much punishment our bodies can take, you know.
Yep.
And when I was in Japan, I saw a lot of fans that maybe were, had special needs. Maybe they had crutches, or there was one guy that had a really bad skin condition, and he would have to wrap his arms up like a mummy, basically, and then sometimes he would bleed through them, and bleed through the bandages, and I think to folks like that they're already facing challenges. I think that's one of the things that wrestling really,
it helps people with is if you're already facing a challenge and you look at, okay, well, look at this baby face, look at the challenges he's got going on right now. He's got a manager outside the ring with a cane poking him in the ribs. He's got this and that going on, and yet he's still fighting, and keeping it going. So, but yeah, I think that's the legacy I hope I leave behind. Is I hope I change somebody's life for the better. You know, um, I love when I see like Simon Gotch is one of my old students, and I loved when I saw him get his run with WWE, and I love still seeing the things that he's accomplishing and doing. I live vicariously through each one of my students that I've ever had.
Nice, very cool. So as far as social media and stuff like that, where can everybody find you, see you, where are you at?
Well, I'm on Facebook, but I think I'm all friended out. I think I've got over 5,000 friends again. Um, every once in a while, I cut people that I haven't heard from in forever or whatever, but I think I'm pretty close. But yeah, you can find me on Facebook, Michael Modest, Michael Modest 3 on Instagram, I believe. I'm also on Twitter, and if you're making a film or a TV show, I'm represented by Models Inc. So out of California, out of San Francisco, California. So you can get a hold of Models Inc. if you want to book me for an acting job. Oh, and if you want to see me do a little bit of acting, I'm on Netflix on 13 Reasons Why, um, season 2, episodes 11 and 12, I believe. I'm just
Awesome.
on, yeah, I'm just on there briefly. I'm a police officer, but I got a speaking line. It was pretty cool. And now I'm on the SAG radar, man. So I'm pretty
Nice.
stoked about that.
That's where you gotta be. Nice. Very
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. I need to get a couple more really good gigs like that, and then be doing a lot. I'd be doing pretty good. I dig it. I really, it's hard because when you're a wrestler, you have this creative thing that you have to have in your life, and when you aren't doing that again, you desperately need to find a different creative outlet, whether it's painting, acting, being a musician, playing guitar. I don't care what it is, but you better find something because otherwise you go nuts.
Very, very true. Well, Mike, thank you so much for all the time today. Really appreciate it.
Right on, John. Pleasure, man.